Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and I wasn't going to get back on Mercedes Lackey quite as soon as this, but my Didius Falco books weren't coming in on time, and I happened to be rereading this anyways, so this is what you're getting. I mean, you know, this may wind up actually coming in later than I'm actually recording this, but like I said, the Didius Falco holds are being real slow at the library. Anyways, so the Serpent's Shadow is the first of Mercedes Lackey's Elemental Masters series. Now this book is predated by the Fire Rose, which is not technically part of the series, but it is very clearly, the magic system is very, very clearly almost identical, and the story is something of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, which fits in very tightly with this series, because this series is fairy tale retellings. Not and this is not like the Fairy Godmother series where you basically are, playing a drinking game of take a shot every time you recognize the fairy tale that's from. What this is Dr. Maya Witherspoon is a half-breed, half Indian, half English. And by Indian, I do mean South Asian India, not, First Nations Native American Indian. Anyways, so she is half and half, and due to a series of magical attacks by her mother's sister, her aunt, the thing is that her aunt has decided to become part of effectively a death cult, which is stuff that you sort of find out in order in the story, but this starts with her being aware that she is being hunted by some kind of magical something. And so she flees India to England because that's where her father is from. Both of her parents, by the way, are dead. But she has fled to England because she is hoping that if she goes to, a country very, very far away from where she was, that the person chasing her will not follow her there. And she comes to England and is basically in the role of Snow White. That is, the Wicked Queen is played by her aunt, and her handsome prince is Watermaster Peter Scott. And this particular book, it hits a certain number of, a certain amount of period unrest. There's a lot of talk of women's suffrage because it is the turn of the last century. It is 1900 and change. And Maya is a doctor in a world that believes that women don't belong in medical school. And she has worked her butt off and has gotten through medical school effectively twice because she was licensed to be a doctor in India. But, of course, coming from third world countries to first world countries, you nonetheless usually have to prove your qualifications all over again. So she had to go through the whole thing again in England, but the book opens with her managing to have gotten herself licensed by bearding a doctor who runs which hospital was it? Whichever hospital it was, and gets herself licensed to be a doctor in no small part by playing demure, wilting lady and saying, I will be doing work for the poor, for the deserving poor, and I will do charity work. And of course, he can't because she's not telling him she's, trying to fight the establishment and become a wealthy doctor. She's telling him she wants to do the womanly thing of being mushy and caring for children and the poor, and so he's willing to let her do that. So you have that, but the role of the seven dwarves is interestingly played by the animals we see on this cover. And the thing about the animals is that at the end of this book, when we have the grand fight gets taken to Maya's Aunt Shivani, and as I said, Shivani has basically become part of a death cult. She's going around murdering people with magic because she wants to take revenge on the English for what they have done to India by murdering a whole whack of people who probably did bad things in India, but at the same time, her, it's very much one of those things, much like what happened in the French Revolution with the sans-culottes, where you get these people who they start off by attacking, those who actually have done wrong, and then end by destroying everybody who might be even vaguely connected to those who have done wrong, even those who were on their own side, because they've sort of run mad with power, except Shivani, like I said, she's part of a death cult, so she's just, gonna send assassins after everybody anyhow. And she's after her niece because of one of those bad guy twisted things where she's angry at her niece for being a half-blood because, the niece should be, she needs to exercise her anger at Surya, Maya's mother, for marrying an Englishman by murdering the daughter, but also she's mad that the daughter, who, being half and half, cannot get taught by anybody, because people who are half and half traditionally get rejected by both the native side. This is true with the Canadian Métis, as it is doubtless true with, people who are half white, half black, and it's going to be true with people in India who are half white, half black, that it's sort of, you're not one or the other, and so you get rejected by both. And so Maya couldn't have gotten a magical education because everybody magical in India would have turned her down flat. And so when she comes to England, that's when Peter Scott, who is just barely allowed into the magic, super society of elemental masters who are supposed to be, protecting the world from evil mages. That's basically what they are, is they're sort of like an underground society of mages who feel it is their job to sort of police bad mages. Except that the elemental masters, the lodge that handles this, are entirely made up of gentlemen and nobility and rich people, and Peter Scott is solidly middle class, and he was a ship's captain who got that way by joining up with a ship when he was a boy and working his way to the top, and he now runs an import business, importing fake Egyptian art, where he gets people who are good at making imitations of Egyptian grave goods will then send it in, and basically what he does is he sells fake Egyptian antiques to people who don't want real ones, because they don't want to have to deal with Egyptian grave goods, and also because if any of them are borderline sensitive, then you have Egyptian ghosts hanging around your home all the time. And it's whereas this thing, which is just brand new and made to just look like something, it's just as good. So he goes and he'll knock a chip off it and say, here, have some fake verification papers. And people are like, yes, I now have my stupid fancy Egyptian thing without having to actually dig stuff out of a tomb. This is great. Anyways, that's his business. But he's not noble, and the only reason he's part of this organization is because he's such a strong water master that they can't ignore him. But he spends basically the whole book complaining about the fact that you have Maya, who is the only Earth, like, soon to be Earth Master because, you know, she has to learn magics. Like, she understands that she has magic and she has figured out how to use some of it, but she hasn't been properly trained in using it. So, you know, he gives her a grounding as part of the, you know, getting to know each other part of this romance, because this is a romance. It's Snow White. Of course it's a romance. But he spends a lot of it complaining about Alderscroft, who runs this, and saying, you know, Alderscroft, she's a really, really strong, soon-to-be Earth Master. You could have an Earth Master in your lodge. And he's like, no, she is a woman and half Indian. We don't let them do that. And, you know, and then he's like, well, you know, you have that doctor, and he's a fire master. No, he is Irish. We do not let Irish doctors into our English nobility club. And so on. Like, it's a lot of that. And by the end of it, he's sort of, Alderscroft has apparently been backed into a corner and forced to admit that, yeah, maybe he should let people into his club who are not super rich if they are good people and powerful mages. Might make your life easier. So, you know, it's a thing. But anyways, the animals are really, really intriguing because while they are pets, they are also semi-possessed by Hindu gods. Like, literally, they're not merely named after, like, Hindu gods, that periodically they start talking, and at the end of the book, they just, like, sort of crop up, and, you know, you have just all of these actual Hindu... I don't know the Hindu pantheon well, but it's just, anyone who does, you can look at them and say, yeah, that animal is associated with that one, and this Hindu god is basically an animal. I mean, which is true in a lot of pantheons. So, I mean, goodness knows the Egyptian pantheon is filled with animal people. So anyways, there's sort of this weird, this very, very odd thing, because it's like Hindu gods possessing animals as the seven dwarves. It's an odd conceit, and creation, but it makes for a very interesting story. And so the thing is, it's not openly Snow White, but you can see, if you are aware that it's supposed to be Snow White, you can see sort of where all of the bones of it are. You can see the bits of the tale that have made it into this properly, such as when Maya's Maya's sort of friend, servant, doorman character tells her about, you know, a faithful friend of theirs who, you know, pretended to have killed Maya or Surya and brought a heart in a box to Shivani and then fled India because, you know, if he didn't, Shivani would have figured it out and killed him. So it's definitively interesting. There's a lot of time spent with Shivani in this book, actually. A lot of time spent with her and her villainous diatribes to herself. It's interesting. I actually usually skim those parts because I'm, you know, more interested in getting back to the meat of the story than listening to somebody complain about how Englishmen are stupid. Anyways, so, yeah. First book of the Elemental Master series. I don't know when I'm getting to the rest of it. That's probably going to be dependent on a whole bunch of other factors. But, yeah. So, another Mercedes Lackey series, because I've read a lot of her books, as you may be able to tell. So that's everything, and I will see you all next week.